Well, welcome to the fun and mentals of real estate. I'm your host today, Angela Dillmon. We have a question of the day first, though, before we do our other intros. What's our question of the day? Why is it so awkward to negotiate with a seller? Ooh, how about that topic?
Yes.
All right, this is my wealth building partner, Glen Calvin, our expert buyer's agent, here today again with us, Josh Gulledge, and we're here to help you build wealth.
Live your dream lifestyle.
And leave legacies.
All right, super good. I don't know how much fun we're going to have today. I don't know. Glenn thinks we're going to have
a lot of
fun.
fun.
I don't know. I think it's pretty mental when it comes to negotiating.
I'm going to say it's going to be very exciting, though. You know, think about it. You don't do this very often. You know, most people are going to buy a house 5, 6, 7 times over their whole lifetime.
Yes.
You're getting down to the nitty and the gritty, and it's going to be great.
Yes, we are. And so just a little thought about negotiating. The reason it can be so awkward is that people just don't like confrontation. I mean, inherent in negotiating is a give and a take. It's a, hey, I might be offering you something you might not want, or in this market, I may have to try to beat the other people, right?
Yep.
And so there's just a lot of tension and a little bit of stress. That's why I say, hey, it is mental. And it is a skill that you build.
It's one of those skills that you hired the real estate, or that this is one of the main reasons you have somebody working on your behalf. So I'm curious, Josh, when does the negotiating start?
Yeah, so again, we've obviously seen the house and they like it. So that's when in real estate, that's when the negotiating is getting started. So on our last podcast, we talked about what the buyer strategies could be.
Right.
So then the negotiating now is to make sure that what the buyer is willing to do and wants to do is going to line up with what I can get the sellers to do, right?
And I see Josh starting negotiating even before the offer's written.
Yeah, yes. Before, so I've chatted with the buyer about what their options are, and they've kind of given me their sense of, hey, this is what I'm willing to do.
Right.
But I also got to go see what I can potentially get the sellers to do, because again, if they're not going to line up or ever line up, then I don't have a chance to even negotiate it, right? So, just for example, like let's just say the seller cannot close in June.
Right.
And my buyer can only close in June. Well, I don't have a chance to put the deal together because it just does not work. So, so just laying the groundwork, I talk to the agent, become, friends with them. If I'm not already friends with them.
Just back up a little bit. I didn't think about that. What is that like? I would say when you're going to work with that agent, it's you versus them. They're the enemy. You got to get something from them. But it's really not like that, is it?
No, honestly, I'm friends with most of the agents. I either know their name or.
Can you still negotiate with them if you're friends?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, again, it doesn't make negotiating a little easier. Absolutely, just because I already have that rapport and that relationship with them, so they don't have to try to think from the very beginning, like, do I trust this agent? Like,
right.
That's huge.
Do I know who I'm dealing with? Like, is this a snake in the grass that's lying through his teeth?
Right.
Instead, again, I a lot of times I pop up on their speed dial, or they know my name, and it's like, oh, hey, Josh is doing a deal. I'd love to do a deal with Josh. We did one 2-3 years ago.
All right, reminiscing about the past deal, how well that went.
This is Josh's profession. He's been doing it for a long time. He's got a reputation, and he's got, he's just known in that community.
Yeah.
Right, and so how does it help if the agent already knows you exactly? What are all the ways that it really helps? If they either recognize your name and they associate good feelings with you, or you have a past relationship with them from another deal you did.
Yeah, so again, every seller's worst nightmare, so the sellers, not the agent, is getting multiple offers especially and ending up with none.
Ooh, and it can happen, believe me.
And agents, sometimes they are pretty worried, like, house been on the market for a while, they have no offers and they get one. They're also worried about losing their only offer. So sometimes it's just knowing, how competent your agent is makes a humongous difference in how you can negotiate. From my side, I like to know the listing agents because, again, you'll start to learn some patterns on how they negotiate, what they do, and just, the trust levels there. So they will probably always tell me a little bit more than they will somebody they don't know.
Right.
And again, you as a listing agent know, like, somebody calls, you'll chat, not necessarily say anything you're not supposed to, but you'll be way more chatty with that agent because you know them. if somebody you don't know from Adam, you're like, well, I've never talked to you. I don't know anything about you. So,
and I'm surprised that a lot of this is happening before you're submitting an offer.
Before, that's right. And the competency level as well is very important.
You're
I
just
know
kind of
that
laying the
I'm not
groundwork.
going to have to do all his work, right? So I've got newer agents or agents who've been around a long time actually, but don't really know what they're doing. And I have to hold their hand through the entire thing, make sure that our groundwork's really good, ask 20 million questions, and sometimes I have to tell them, this isn't going to work the way you wrote this. You need to go back to the drawing board, and you're always doing the work for them throughout the whole transaction. So
that's when you're the listing, when you're the listing
I'm the listing agent.
Right.
So knowing that you have a good, competent buyer's agent is super important. I know I'm going to get to closing without a lot of hassles and not a lot of hurdles because of incompetency, and it happens.
Because I think there's a misconception too that it's always the highest price that wins the deal.
No, it's not. It's not always the highest price. Okay, so you've got this rapport building with the agent. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about how that flows when you first talk to them?
Yeah. So again, I hope, for just to speak on my reputation again, I hope over the last 10 plus years that my reputation is that, I'm easy to work with, and my buyers are really easy to work with. And I would say that if I interviewed enough agents, I would say that's probably what they would say, which is just huge. Again, I like to know whenever I call a listing agent that they've been around and they're super trustworthy and they're easy to work with.
And they're easy to work with too. And the other part of that is easy to work with is that they know that we use a great lender.
Yeah, again.
So this is where Glen enters and Guild Mortgage, right? Because our buyers are very well vetted and underwritten most of the time with a really well reputized lender.
Yes, and it's not uncommon for me to get on the phone and talk to that listing agent too, and to tell them that it's the easy.
So that's another part of the team.
When you're on this phone call, what are you trying to learn, or I don't want to say gain, doesn't sound right, just to get from that initial conversation before you make the offer?
Yeah, so again, a lot of these people are my friends, so it's not like I call on the phone and I'm immediately hammering them with negotiating tactics or anything.
And that happens.
A lot of times it's truly just it's been a while since I've talked to him, sometimes a couple years. I recognize her name but haven't talked to him, and it's just, how's your business going? Like how's life been? It's a little bit of catching up and the rapport, reminding him of our past deal. Because even though this just happened recently, I knew the agent, we're doing a deal right now, but we couldn't remember off the top of our head which house it was. So we were both like, was it this house? And I was like, hey, I remember it went smooth when you can't remember the deal. But so a lot of times it's just, getting that out there. And then it just naturally flows into some questions. It's like, hey, well, on this particular example was, well, does your seller have, do they know where they're going? Like that's a standard question that buyers like to know before they write offers. And if I just picked up the phone and said, do your sellers know where they're going? What's your seller's situation? It's like,
and I get that all the time as a listing agent.
They're never going to answer that because it's kind of a harsh tone, and it sets like, oh, are we like, am I negotiating? Do I need to come back hard?
And I'm still trying to, as a listing agent, figure out who this buyer agent is.
Yeah.
Are they competent? Are they good? If I don't know them, what's their personality, right?
Yeah.
So it's
just knowing,
rapport is important.
After I've built a rapport and I'm talking to them, again, this is just one example of many terms in a contract, but it's, do your sellers know where they're going? Because if they need a little bit more time, I would like to give them more time. My offer will immediately not look good if your sellers need 6 to 7 weeks to close, and I throw a 3-week close on there. Like it's and it's
and
more.
I assume that can work the opposite too, because if you've got a loan that's underwritten, all approved, and they need to move quickly, your offer might be we can close in 10 days.
The worst and hardest thing about negotiating is because there are a lot of terms on that contract. If we're not lining up on a lot of those contracts or terms, well, are we doing paperwork? Are we pretty much in agreement? And we would have been in agreement from the start, but because I put missed dates, we're having to adjust all kinds of stuff, and that's very difficult. And,
it is.
And especially if we're in multiple offers, if one contract is 90% lined up from the start, and one contract which would be maybe even more flexible than the other contract, but we're off on 50% of the dates and the terms because
it's very true.
It's just, who's the listing agent going to spend their time? They'd rather go to the contract that's just change a few things and be done rather than rewrite the whole thing. So
it is very true. If you line up with the seller's needs and wants, it does really make a difference. So I do know you research the the agent as well? What are some of the things you research on the listing agent?
Yeah, so again, if I don't know them, especially, I do a little bit more. But I like to know if they know how to price. What they're especially if they've been in the business a long time, they have trends on. Do they typically overprice and do price reductions? Do they underprice and get 6% more on every house? So that helps, especially for the buyers when I'm talking pricing. But I can also see just if it doesn't look like it lines up. Like this listing agent never prices high, and this house just seems so high. And I can have that conversation like, hey, did you in a nice way? Did you price this or did your sellers price this?
Right.
And most of the time, especially agents, we do have a lot of pride, and they'll be like, Josh, I would have never priced this home here. Like they're pretty honest and
then
brutally
they just
honest.
tell you.
They're like, yeah, my sellers are crazy, and they priced this way too high. And it's like, so then I can back into it, and it's like, well, what would you have priced the home at? And that's just another way of strategizing it. But
so this conversation is super important. This is why you hire the buyer agent. Now, I know the next thing is actually sending in the offer. So how important is how you send in the offer?
Yeah, so again, through conversations with the agent, anything I can find out about their sellers, even how sellers fill out the disclosure, you can kind of pick out their personality types.
Oh, so trying to figure out the seller's personality.
Did the sellers fill out every single box to a T, super particular, like list out improvements that they'd done 25 years ago?
Right,
like
very
that's
detailed.
Versus somebody that skips half the pages and says like, they're not going to take the same approach to see my offer. So, and again, we're going to get way in the weeds, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that.
Communication is really
important.
But the communication
and how I write, even my email and present these offers, in case the sellers see any of my comments, like in the email. Some agents just forward the email.
Some agents forward. You do write it like you're writing to a seller. Right, and we know that there's a lot of agents, even that have been around a long time, really don't know how to position their buyers well in a seller or a listing agent's mind. Because what's the most important thing to a seller after the price? Getting to closing, right? And so positioning them well is everything to do with their finances, how much they like it, what other things are.
Well, and again, just to go back real quick on when I send this email off, again, if agents are talking to a lot of different clients, agents are completely different too, right? So, like, if you write me, if I was a listing agent, if you wrote me a 2-page email about why my buyers are great, there's almost 0% chance I read that. I would read it. Give me the bullet points. I want to know, and if I'm representing you, obviously I would, but my personality type is give me the bullet points. Why are you good? Give it quickly. Like I've got 5 offers I'm negotiating here. There's too much information, but there are agents that I talk to, and they're chatty Cathys, and they're like, how is life 10 years ago? And catch me up on your whole life story. Like, they want to see those 2 pages. So, again, I do mirror and match the personality type that I'm talking to, just so I know that the information I want to relay gets relayed.
Right. So the email is very important. A lot of agents either don't call. I get a lot of agents who just send in offers, never called me, never ever talked to me. Number 2, they might have talked to me a little bit in the beginning, and then the offer just appears through DocuSign or .loop or some e-signature format, right? And it just appears with no commentary whatsoever. So I don't know anything about the buyers in their financial situation. I do a pre-approval letter. And if I don't know the lender, then I'm like, I don't know the lender. So
do you look to see if it's a pre-approval letter or a loan commitment letter? Because I know
the
ones Josh and I, we really try and send that loan commitment letter in.
Right.
Saying this loan is all.
And that's an important point that he makes in his email is how well they're positioned financially, right? And so it makes a difference. So I know that then staying in touch with the agent even then after you submit or even before you submit. So tell us a story about that.
Yeah, so we just had one a few months ago, and it was, sellers were reviewing offers on Monday, and that means nothing because they can pick one whenever they want. But it was Friday, first day of showings. We were one of the first ones in the door. I had already talked to this agent and said, hey, we're super interested. Can you keep me posted on offers? He said, absolutely. And again, I don't like to typically close the day without touching base with them in case something's changed. Because if somebody tries to push them to 10 o'clock
Yes,
deadline.
that's right. So buyer's agents will come in and you'll say, I'm not going to look at it until Sunday, but they'll give you a deadline tonight or 24 hours, and they'll try to push on that listing
And that could be one of their strategies too. But so I was just like, hey, I'm just touching base because I know you said, are you still planning on reviewing on Monday? And he's like, oh, by the way, I thank you for reaching back out because I knew I was missing somebody. We have a couple offers in hand. We're making a decision by 9, and it was 7.
Oh, man.
So, which again, I was as soon as I start this negotiating, it's like being on call. Like, I'm not away from my phone, or if I am, our team members are available too. So, it's not like we're in the middle of a deal like, oh, we missed it. That's the worst thing that can happen. While it's always possible, but it was okay, great. Like, I'm ready. Called the buyer and said, hey, here's the situation. I think ultimately the buyers did well because I think if they would have waited, the sellers would have got more money. But beside the point. So, but yeah, communication was just touching base with them. But there's so many. And
those buyers, by the way, ended up getting the house.
Yeah, we did get the house.
I mean, that's the important end of the story here is because you reached out, they did not miss out.
Yep.
It's another reason that you're hiring someone that has a lot of focus on what they do. Again, a buyer's agent specifically, and not running around doing 10 other things.
And it comes down to communication.
One of my favorite communication stories is we had a client, and beautiful home came on the market. Just such a nice one. Of course, the world was looking at it. There were 15 offers in, and we put our best offer we could, but we were outgunned, outpriced. I mean, everything that we put our best foot on it, and there were people that could just do stuff that we couldn't.
Right.
And so I had a feeling we were going to lose, and of course we did. I talked to the agent and got my follow-up and said, hey, out of the 15 offers, where would we have been? And we were like 9 or 10, so we were way down on the list. But I noticed, I don't let it just die. I noticed the next day that it still hadn't gone pending in the system. So I called the agent and was just chatting with her. Well, by the time she had told 14 other people that they did not get the house, the sellers and that buyer had gotten into a dispute over their contract. And I was like, well, if I can get you I can match almost everything. If I could get you as high of a price as we could go, would you just tell that other buyer to go away and pick us? And she said, send it my way. So I told the buyer, hey, we have nothing to lose. We were in the 10th. It's like, send it. So we put our best price on it. They ended up getting the house, and I think we were like 10 grand lower than that other offer.
10 grand lower.
What's not fun about that? That's the most fun I've ever heard. That's an amazing story.
And they were just squabbling over a washer and dryer. So it's amazing sometimes just the communication because you can't take any assumptions.
You can't. So communication really is the key. It's one of the things you're paying for. And they did end up getting that house. They still own it today. They're very, very happy.
Yep.
I mean, it's really important that your negotiator really stays on top of it. That's something that we do here. No doubt about it. And there's so many intricacies. This is a skill that you learn over time. It's not just something you pop up and do one day. And it is awkward to negotiate with people face to face or even directly, right? So salesmen are mostly in the middle of most transactions that you do.
But I think the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And again, that's what we talked in the beginning about. I'm only going to do this 4 or 5 times in my lifetime, where Josh is doing it 4 or 5, 6 times a month.
But don't mistake the fact that I have seen agents 10, 15 years in the business that don't do what Josh does.
Yep.
So the skill of negotiating is something you really focus on. Just time in the business does not always give you that.
Yep.
It is something that you really purposefully have developed over time.
Well, you two both work really hard at your craft.
Yeah. So I hope you had a little bit of fun today.
I had a lot of fun.
But negotiating begins even before you write the offer. And for a listing agent, true too. I'm negotiating the minute I put that listing out there, and agents are calling me. So the negotiation is a lot different than you think, especially in this market, right?
Yep.
So thanks for joining us today. So we are going to next week go our next step, and hey, once we're under contract, what do we talk about then, right? Yeah, super good. Thanks for joining us. Give us a like, a share, a follow, subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate you watching, and we'll talk to you next week.